In this presentation, we will be learning about lazy loading images. What we will be learning is what is lazy loading images? What are the benefits of using them? And how to implement them into your web pages. Lazy loading images means to load images on a web page only when they appear in the browser's viewport. This means that if a user doesn't scroll all the way down, images placed at the bottom of a web page won't even load. The main benefit of this is that lazy loading images helps with website performance. On a site with a significant number of images, using lazy loading images could make the difference between users staying or leaving your website. Since most lazy loading solutions work by loading images only if the user has scrolled to the location where the image would be visible inside the viewport, those images will never be loaded if the user never gets to that point. This will save a lot of bandwidth, and most users, especially those accessing the web on mobile devices and slow connections, will be thankful. How to implement lazy loading images into your web page. Okay, so here I've created a web page, and in this highlighted area here you can see I have included 5 images. Now these images right now, all they are showing is just this loading GIF right here. And what's going to happen is right here, this window dot on scroll, this calls a function which is called lazy load. So what that means is when the user starts scrolling, it will then call this function, which will figure out and understand if the image is in the viewport or is able to be viewed, and it will load the image. So how that works is this function has a variable which is called lazy image, and this actually gets the element with whatever you want to name it, whatever class you want to call it. I called it lazy. So it's going through and it's finding all the elements that have this class. And then this for loop takes that information and it uses that to run through the for loop. So it will run through it 5 times, and this for loop will then call this other function, which is called element in viewport, and that function is right here. And what this function is doing is it is understanding or figuring out which if the image is able to be viewed. And how that works is this method right here, get bounding client RECT. This is a method that will allow the function to check the size of the window. And it does that by comparing each point of the window to whichever element that you are comparing it to, where that element is located. So right here we can see how it is looking at the top part of the web page, and the top. So this area right here is checking the top left part of the web page, and that's always going to be 0, 0. And so it's taking whichever image it's currently looking at, that element, it's taking its location and it's comparing it to this section right here, and it's understanding if it's less than or equal to 0, or sorry, greater than or equal to 0 from the top, and greater than or equal to 0 from the left. And then it's comparing the bottom right if it is less than or equal to the bottom, which is right here, and then it will compare whether it is less than or equal to the right. So between these, between all four of these, it will understand if it's able to be viewed or not. And if it is, it will return a true. And what happens at this point is whichever element it's looking at, it will then change its source, which is currently looking at that GIF, that loading image, and it will change it to this data dash source, which is the image to be loaded. So we can go ahead and show that here. So here's the web page, and once I start scrolling, it will load the images. So you can see it loaded image 1, image 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we run into an issue with, okay, so your website loads, but it's not loading anything until the user starts scrolling. So in order to fix that, the very first thing we want to do in the script is call the function lazy load immediately, and it will go through and figure out if that image or whatever on the screen at the time is already in that viewport or is able to be viewed by the user. So now that I have uncommented that out, go ahead and save it. Then I'll just reload this, and it pops up with what should be there. It's visible, so that image should be loaded. Now if I scroll down, you can see that it's loading these images as I scroll. Okay, so let's try that again. So we have the number 1 image, the first image, loaded. Then we scroll down, and we have the third image, the fourth image, and the fifth image loading. So with being able to use this is really helps with the bandwidth of the site and helps the site be more functional, and to be able to be used a lot easier for people, especially on mobile devices as well. So that's the whole presentation.